The Soviet invasion of eastern Poland on September 17, 1939, remains one of the most revealing, yet often overlooked events of the early Second World War. It wasn't an emergency act, nor a sudden response to military chaos. It was the execution of a prearranged plan, a plan written not on battlefield maps, but on a secret document signed weeks before the first Soviet soldier crossed the Polish frontier. That document was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The invasion demonstrated how political deals can erase borders, how two ideologically opposite dictatorships can cooperate when convenient, and how a nation can be destroyed not by one enemy, but by two working together behind closed doors. A pact signed in the shadows. On August 23, 1939, diplomats in Moscow finalized a deal that shocked the world. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union agreed not to attack each other. Publicly, the Non-Aggression Pact sounded like a simple diplomatic agreement. But the true danger lay in the secret protocol hidden beneath it. The secret protocol divided Eastern Europe into two spheres of influence. Germany would take Western Poland. The Soviet Union would take Eastern Poland. The Baltic states were divided. Parts of Romania were marked for Soviet expansion. For Poland, this was a death sentence written before the war even started. Germany strikes first. Poland fights alone. Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939. With overwhelming speed, the German blitzkrieg smashed through Polish defenses. Within days, the Polish army found itself retreating, regrouping, and desperately trying to resist. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union watched silently. Stalin had promised Hitler he would invade only after Poland was weak enough. The USSR would not face serious resistance. It would simply move in and take its allotted portion. Poland expected the Western Allies to launch an offensive against Germany. They had treaties. They had promises. But those promises became empty words. Britain and France declared war, but did not meaningfully attack. The phony war on the Western Front left Poland fighting alone. The Soviet excuse, a political performance. On September 17th, the USSR delivered a message to the Polish ambassador. The Polish state no longer exists. We must protect the Ukrainian and Belarusian population. This was the justification. A political illusion, a performance with no sincerity. Poland had not surrendered. Its government had not dissolved. Its armies were still fighting Germany. But the Soviet Union pretended that Poland's collapse was complete and irreversible. Behind this lie, the Red Army prepared to cross the border. At dawn, they invaded. Chaos on the Eastern Front. When the Red Army entered, Polish forces were stunned. They had been fighting the Germans on the Western Front for over 2 weeks. Now another giant had attacked from the east. Commanders could no longer coordinate. Units were surrounded on multiple sides. Soldiers didn't know whom to fight, or whether resisting the Soviets would worsen their situation. Some units fought fiercely. Others were captured without firing a shot. Many just tried to escape south to Romania, hoping to continue the fight from abroad. The Soviet advance was swift. Key cities such as Grodno, Lviv, and Vilno came under fire. In Grodno, civilians and students joined soldiers and used improvised weapons against Soviet tanks. But bravery had limits. The strategic balance was hopeless. The meeting of two invaders. As the Soviets advanced, German troops moved east. Eventually, both armies met along the agreed demarcation line. What happened next was one of the most disturbing scenes of the early war. German and Soviet commanders held joint meetings. They exchanged salutes. They coordinated withdrawals and handovers. They celebrated their cooperation. Soviet and German troops even held parades together in some cities, including Brest-Litovsk. The world later saw photographs of smiling German and Soviet officers standing side by side. Those images became proof that the destruction of Poland was not an accident of war, but a coordinated operation. Poland was partitioned like a piece of property between two empires. The fate of the civilians. For civilians in eastern Poland, the Soviet invasion was not liberation. It was the beginning of repression. The NKVD, the Soviet secret police, followed the army closely. Their mission was clear: eliminate any group or individual who could resist Soviet control. Targets included Polish officers, police, intellectuals, clergy, landowners, teachers, anyone connected to the Polish state. Those arrested were deported to Siberia, Kazakhstan, and other remote regions. Families were separated. Children disappeared. People were put on cattle trains without food or water. This process continued for months. The Soviets intended not just to occupy Poland's eastern half, but to dismantle Polish culture and identity there. The Katyn Massacre, the darkest consequence. In 1940, months after the invasion, the Soviets executed more than 20,000 Polish officers and intellectuals in what became known as the Katyn Massacre. The victims were buried in mass graves. The Soviets denied responsibility for decades, blaming the Germans. But the truth had started with the invasion. Katyn was not an isolated atrocity. It was the logical continuation of Soviet policy in occupied Poland. The silence of the West. What shocked many Poles was the world's reaction, or lack of reaction. While Britain and France were now technically at war with Germany, they avoided condemning the Soviet Union too strongly. They were afraid of pushing the USSR towards an alliance with Hitler. So Poland was cut in half, and the world remained mostly silent. The end of the campaign, a country erased. By early October 1939, the joint German-Soviet operation was complete. Germany controlled the West, the Soviet Union controlled the East. Poland was no longer on the map. Its government fled. Its soldiers were killed, captured, or exiled. Its people were divided under two harsh occupiers. Its borders were redrawn without any regard for its sovereignty. Why the Soviet invasion matters today. The invasion exposes several timeless truths. Totalitarian regimes can cooperate when interests align, regardless of ideology. Secret agreements can destroy nations. War isn't only fought with armies, it's fought with lies, treaties, and manipulation. Silence from allies can be as deadly as an enemy's attack. The Soviet invasion of eastern Poland was not just a military act. It was a political betrayal, a strategic calculation, and a humanitarian tragedy. It completed the destruction of Poland in 1939 and helped ignite the fire that became the Second World War.